Welcome to Docs on Docs, the podcast that asks real doctors to rate or recommend a television documentary that they recently watched.
You might say it's just what the doctor ordered. Introductions. Brian Murray, welcome. This is
Thank
my
you.
childhood friend and colleague who is a healthcare administrator along with myself. And what started out as making recommendations to physicians in the doctor's lounge that we interacted with professionally, whether it was Hulu, HBO, YouTube, or Cinemax, or Amazon Prime, or our favorite Netflix. What started as a conversational piece took on a life of its own as we started making recommendations to doctors about the next great documentary to watch. So great to have Mr. Brian Andy Dufresne Murray with us. Take it away, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's introduce this episode's guest doctor. His name is Dr. Alan Enriquez. He is a hospitalist internal medicine physician with a health system in the greater Kansas City area. Welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to
Good to
have you.
have you.
Thank you very, very much. Before we get started, I'd like to maybe profile John DeLorean, which will speak a little bit about the documentary that Dr. Enriquez has watched. Would you like to give us a little bit of details, Dr. Enriquez?
Well, as far as John DeLorean himself or the documentary,
The documentary itself.
yeah, it's about John DeLorean, obviously the guy who created the DeLorean and kind of his background, how it came to be in terms of his ideas about this. He was he was with GM, correct? Many
Correct.
years, and then he decided he was going to develop a car of his own, and it was supposed to be new. It was supposed to be futuristic. It was supposed to be efficient, and he, of course, called it the DeLorean. And it all goes about how it all tells us about how he went about making this dream of his into a reality, and kind of the potholes and everything else that he encountered along the way. Anything else in particular you want me to cover?
Yeah, no, great. The documentary itself is Myth and Mogul, John DeLorean. It is a 2021 British limited docu-series directed by Mike Connolly. Its story follows the life and turbulent career of automobile engineer and executive John DeLorean, which is told through archival footage and interviews. Pretty well done. To give a little bit of background, John DeLorean was born in Detroit, Michigan. He created what was known as the first, I guess, muscle car, the Pontiac GTO. The
Yep.
following year, the year following his departure from GM, John DeLorean married his third wife, fashion model, cover girl, and actress Christina Ferrar, who was 25 years his junior. He ended up being married four times. John
Here's the deal.
DeLorean's
Here's the deal. So the guy has been gone for many years
20
now,
years.
right?
20
Yeah.
years.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's been gone, and three movies have been made about this guy, right? There was one called Driven, another one Living the Dream, and of course the Netflix documentary we're talking about now. And clearly he was a visionary, But what what drew you? I ask both of you, but Dr. Enriquez, what drew you to this documentary in particular? Are you a car enthusiast, or you enjoy documentaries like us?
Totally car enthusiast. In fact, I was kind of hoping it would go more into the DeLorean car itself, but it was kind of a pleasant little twist that it talked about him, how he kind of went on his pathway of trying to create this, and literally all the people he seemed to, um, I don't know what the right word is for it, but all of the, I should say carnage, but all the peripheral effects of the way he went about doing what he did to make this car, to make this dream of his a reality. Um, I think that was probably the most interesting thing, and I had no idea about the guy himself, but You know, the fact that he birthed this vehicle that that was his obviously his
Iconic.
dream. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was his dream vehicle, and the fact that this thing was a conceived literally out of I don't know how many countries. It was Belfast where the factory was, but he had some funding from was it Britain, the British,
Yeah,
and
over 100 million, over 100
yeah,
million they gave him to try and get the car started in Belfast. And again, it's an iconic car. We don't need to mention Back to the Future, right? But it's an iconic car beyond that. And let me ask you something. If you could have dinner with any automotive designer of all time, living or dead, all the way back to the assembly line, right? The mass assembly line with Henry Ford. Who would you love to have dinner with? Would it be DeLorean or would it be someone else?
I would probably go with was it Ferdinand Porsche, the original Porsche
The
guy?
German? Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
probably
Very strong.
yeah, absolutely. And Brian knows I'm a Porsche file, but
Mhm.
probably the what I would ask him is why just stick the engine in the back? You know, after after all these years, the first and he made it out of a VW, stuck the engine in the back, and here it is to this day. But uh, that's
Well,
probably who I'd have.
The DeLorean's rear mounted. The
Yes,
DeLorean is rear mounted as
absolutely.
well, right? So
Yeah.
again, and apparently DeLorean was one of the first to introduce airbags as well. And so, I mean, we've got the Tesla Cybertruck, which is made of stainless steel. It was we were talking to before we jumped on the podcast.
Mhm.
I mean, the guy clearly was a visionary. Obviously, he had an affinity for the ladies, but he was a pioneer at GM. He's a Detroit native, and then things just kind of go off the rails. And what's fascinating is all this time later, there's still now two more car companies that bears his name, right? The DeLorean name was purchased by a company in Houston, Texas. They refurbish DeLoreans and sell them, and they're going for a pretty penny these days, which is remarkable in its own right. And then DeLorean's daughter has announced that she's coming out with a car as well. So the Gullwing DeLorean in 2026, 27 is supposed to be coming out all electric, and yet mired in controversy like this himself, right? The myth, the legend. Even now today, DeLorean cars are still with us or about to be with us again, and yet controversy follows that as well. So I really enjoyed the documentary. I thought it was pretty remarkable in its own right. Um, if you so I think Rotten Brian did Rotten what did Rotten Tomatoes give it? Remember?
No, was it
I want to
80?
I think they
Give it a
gave it
second.
100%.
Oh my God, you're right. I did look that up. It did give it 100% off of 8 reviews.
Yep.
Um, I think the IMDb rankings was like 6.8 out of 10. I don't
Okay.
know how many reviews can,
Respectable.
yeah, which contributed to that. Google users, I think, had it about 66%. So, Dr. Enriquez, do you have any thoughts in terms of how you rank this particular DeLorean documentary?
Um, I I just do the whole out of 10 thing. I'd probably rank it a good 8 out of 10. I think probably the part that was most interesting to me is how a guy who is as brilliant as he was could shoot himself in the foot so many times. I mean,
Yeah.
don't you think? I
Yeah.
mean, he had conceived this car at a time when efficiency and sustainability and all these things really weren't in the conversation like they are in 2025. I mean,
Yep.
he had the foresight to know that that was going to be something of value, but yet he couldn't manage his business in a way that itself was sustainable. If you think about it, I mean, he kind of goes down and he kind of goes around and knocks down all the dominoes that he put up himself to sustain the business. So that in itself was a bit of an irony on how he went about just trying to make a buck actually too.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, this guy had all these again great ideas, and he just couldn't stay out of his own way, I guess is the best way to put it. Whatever he did ended up tripping him. He ended up tripping himself down the line. So that to me was probably the most standout part of that documentary. That standout part of the documentary from my standpoint, anyway.
Agreed. Agreed. Brian, here's a question for you because you're a car guy as well. What happens if DeLorean stays in Detroit, ascends to the head of GM? Does he go toe to toe with Lee Iacocca? And do we have a different U.S. automobile market as a result?
Totally know what you're saying, Les. So you put like someone like John DeLorean versus a Lee Iacocca. Lee Iacocca was for fitting a car with the existing culture. Okay. So he did stuff like the Mustang. When he took over the Jeep brand, he like essentially helped to integrate SUVs into the culture. You look at the Caravan, the minivan that kind of had the soccer mom kind of blend right into the culture that way. But DeLorean was a visionary. He was one that essentially created a car and then culture caught up to it.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
the
I don't think you have to be by any means. I don't think you have to be. I think if you're our age, you have fond affinity memories of the '80s, right?
Yep.
And so that appeals in watching this documentary. I don't think you have to be a car aficionado by any means. Just to see ego, vision, and can be its own worst enemy at the same time. It's all packaged into this documentary, and so I really enjoyed the series of the documentaries, and I think it was again I'd give it a solid 7.5.2.
Got it. And I think the documentary itself wrapped up with the F. Scott Fitzgerald quote, "There are no second acts in America." And I got to tell you, it really did help encapsulate the theme that was, hey, this guy had a run and it was still a pretty good run. And he's made a massive impact. But when you consider at the end of his life, he was basically alone. And I think they said he was like selling watches on eBay or online or
So
something like that.
basically, he didn't learn anything. I
Yeah,
think that's
Yep.
that's probably
Well,
pretty
he was a narcissist. I mean, he was a narcissist. Let's right, which is not an unusual trait for visionary leaders such as him. But he was clearly a big narcissist. He even had plastic surgery to fix his jaw when he left Pontiac. So,
and
I mean, nothing
all
wrong
at
with
the
plastic surgery. I'm just saying that he was.
all at the same time to leave such a massive legacy. So that I think I agree with both you guys. That was the big takeaway in terms of how I would say it ranks. And I think Les, I'm a little bit more strict or stringent on my rankings. I would
Here he
put
comes.
it
Here he
at
comes.
about a 6.5 to 7. So
Okay.
right, just maybe a hair under what we rated the Kings of Tupelo, which I would last time. I think I put that about a 7.5, but I put this about a 6.5 to 7. The content was great. Um, the content was great. I mean, obviously with John DeLorean himself and the life that he led, that was I think the story was by far the most interesting part of it, and how it was all woven together was fine, but didn't kind of blow you away. So going,
Totally agree.
I'll go 6.5 to 7. Good guys. Les, you want to kind of wrap things up in terms of ringing bells and asking people to subscribe?
Thank you, my friend, for taking that for us. Again, do
Sure.
we really care if anybody subscribes? Not really.
Well,
Uh,
if you
but
want to say
we
who
enjoy,
sponsored this podcast.
yes, Al's Garage on 35th Street. Who he does not service DeLoreans, but thank him for his sponsorship. No.
got
Al
a
South.
question for you guys. What do you think, with knowing what you know about John DeLorean, how do you think his daughter's car is going to go off, if it does?
Oh, Les, you want to start?
Yeah, you know what? Absolutely fantastic. There are no second acts in America. Apparently, there is if your last name is DeLorean. I don't think she's going to get her car done. I don't think it'll come into existence. You can look it up if you're really interested. I did in anticipation of us talking about it today. The DeLorean.com, the company that's DMC Florida, DMCTexas.com, they are on it. And they had a model of the car, an actual functional prototype of the car at the concourse in California. The Concourse d'Elegance event that
Pebble
in the car
Beach.
show in California. Yep, Pebble Beach,
Yep.
thanks. So they had it there. So I think that's going to come to market, and if it's not too expensive, I'm going to take a serious look at it myself. I think it's a super cool car, and the fact that it's electric and they preserve the gull wing makes it really, really exciting. It's a gorgeous car. I encourage you to go take a look at it.
My addendum to that is when you consider the timing and this convergence of, are we going to go electric full bore? Are we not? I think it's kind of a sweet spot of a time to introduce something new. And if you're going to introduce it now. And with the uniqueness, with the uniqueness of that car, I think now is the time to introduce it because again, are you fitting it into the culture? And maybe DeLorean was a little bit ahead of his time, or right now has culture finally caught up to the DeLorean?
Yeah, that's pretty deep. I didn't know you
Well,
had that in you, but I'm impressed.
you're dealing with me, Les. Sorry.
Strong work. Look, if you enjoy documentaries like Brian and I and the physicians that we have on the show do, then ring the bell, subscribe, and we'll be sure to get you updates as we interview more physicians about what we find to be really interesting and fascinating documentaries that don't go on and on. There's certainly ones that you can binge and get done. If you do watch the John DeLorean Netflix documentary and you enjoy it, or you have thoughts or additional comments, weigh in on our comments section of YouTube. That's what we're all about, is exchanging ideas and thoughts on documentaries that we love.
Thank you, Dr. Enriquez. It was truly an honor to have you with us. We not only appreciate all of your comment and input, but just due to the fact that you're a car aficionado yourself, I thought this was a really great fit for you.
Seriously, thank Dr. Enriquez for giving us time. Absolute pleasure having him on the podcast. And as always, Brian, take us away.
Yep. We will see you next time on Docs
Docs
on
on
Docs.
Docs.